The first thing James noticed when he stepped into Walmart after midnight was how different it felt without customers. During the day, the store was a chaos of beeping scanners, squeaky carts, and impatient voices echoing through the aisles. But now, with the doors locked and the fluorescent lights humming faintly above, the place felt like an abandoned cathedral of consumerism. Rows upon rows of silent shelves stretching endlessly into the distance. James had just started the night shift. At 23, he wasn't exactly thrilled to be here. College hadn't worked out, bills were piling up, and this job was at least steady. Stock the shelves, face the products forward, sweep up the mess, and try not to fall asleep before 6 a.m. That was the plan. Maria, the head of security, gave him a quick tour before disappearing into the monitor room. Two other employees, Darren, a jokester who had been here forever, and Chloe, a quiet girl who kept to herself, were already hard at work in different sections. James was assigned the frozen foods aisle, a place that smelled faintly of spilled milk and bleach. For the first hour, everything went smoothly. He pulled boxes from pallets, lined up frozen dinners, stacked soda bottles, and tried to keep his earbuds hidden from the cameras. But as the clock crept past 1 a.m., he started to notice little things. A cart squeaking, a distant clatter, like something falling, a shadow flickering at the end of the aisle. At first, he brushed it off. A store this big always made noise, air conditioning kicking in, lights buzzing, the building settling. But when he turned down aisle 7 to grab a roll of tape, he froze. There, right in the middle of the empty aisle, sat a shopping cart. It was the kind with a slightly bent frame, one wheel twisted at an odd angle. James frowned. He could have sworn that aisle was empty earlier. Slowly, he pushed the cart aside and looked around. Nobody, just the low hum of the lights above. He kept working, but the sound followed him. That squeaking wheel again. Not behind him this time, but 2 aisles over. He peeked around the corner. Nothing. Just endless shelves of cereal boxes staring back at him. His radio crackled. Mariah's voice cut through the static. "James, are you in frozen foods?" "Yeah." "Why?" "You should come to the security room. There's something you need to see." His stomach dropped. When James entered the monitor room, Maria was pale. She pointed at one of the screens. The black and white feed showed aisle 14. A lone figure moved slowly down the row, pushing a cart. It was blurry, like the camera couldn't quite focus. James leaned closer. "Who's that?" "Darren." Maria shook her head. "Everyone's accounted for. Darren's in the back, Chloe's in toys. That aisle should be empty." As they watched, the figure stopped. Slowly, its head turned. Not toward the shelves, not down the aisle, but directly at the camera. James stumbled back. What the hell? The screen flickered. The figure was gone. Maria rubbed her temples. It's probably a glitch. Cameras mess up all the time. But her voice wasn't convincing. James forced a laugh. "Yeah, glitch. Right." Still, when he walked back into the store, every aisle felt different. Longer, darker. The silence pressed on his ears, and the endless rows of products seemed to watch him. He picked up his pace, stocking shelves faster than before, eyes flicking toward the corners, half expecting that bent shopping cart to roll out again. And then, just as he reached the end of frozen foods, he heard it, the unmistakable creak of a cartwheel. This time, it was right behind him. James spun around. The aisle was empty, only the buzzing lights above and the frozen meals stacked neatly in their glass doors. No cart, no footsteps, nothing, but the sound lingered in his ears, like an echo from somewhere deeper in the store. He realized, with a chill crawling down his spine, that Walmart wasn't as empty as it seemed. James tried to shake off the feeling of being watched. It had to be his imagination, the kind of paranoia that came with working overnight in a massive, empty building. Still, the sound of that phantom shopping cart clung to him. He stocked a few more boxes of frozen pizza, but he couldn't stop glancing behind him. Every time he turned around, the aisle was still empty. His heart refused to slow down. Then his radio crackled again. "James," Mariah's voice said, low and uneasy. "Can you come back to the monitor room? Something's off." James hesitated. Is it another glitch? A pause. Just get here. Reluctantly, James abandoned his cart and hurried across the echoing floor, his sneakers squeaking against the polished tiles. The silence of the store seemed heavier now, almost as if the aisles themselves were listening. When he reached the monitor room, Maria was hunched forward, staring at the wall of screens. Her knuckles were white against the desk. "What is it?" James asked. She didn't answer at first. She just pointed. On the screen labeled aisle 14, the figure was back. This time, it was closer to the camera. The black and white image showed a tall, thin shape, almost featureless, its head slightly tilted to one side. It wasn't pushing a cart now. It was standing perfectly still, in the dead center of the aisle, staring up into the lens. James felt his skin crawl. "That's not Darren." Maria shook her head. "I just radioed him. He's still unloading in the back. And Chloe's over in toys. No one's in that aisle." The figure didn't move. The grainy feed flickered, distorting the image, but every time it cleared, the thing was still there, motionless, waiting. Maria clicked through the other cameras, trying to get a different angle. Aisle 13, empty. Aisle 15, empty. She switched back to 14. The figure was gone. Jameis' breath caught in his throat. "Wait, rewind it." Maria scrubbed the footage back a few seconds. The figure returned, standing in place. She hit pause. "See, it's some kind of glitch." But as they both stared, the paused figure slowly, impossibly moved. Its head turned a fraction. The frozen image looked up directly at them, its dark face seeming to lean closer to the camera lens. Maria gasped and slammed the keyboard, stopping the tape. "Nope, nope, I'm not doing this." That James swallowed hard. "That's not possible." Maria turned to him, her voice shaky. "Look, I've worked here 6 years. These cameras screw up all the time. I've seen static, I've seen double images, but I have never seen that." A sound cut her off. A heavy, metallic crash echoed through the store. Both of them jumped to their feet. Maria grabbed her radio. "Darren? Chloe? You guys okay?" Only static answered. The crash came again, louder, like something metal hitting the floor in the distance. James felt his chest tighten. Maria reached for a flashlight and handed James another. "Come on, we'll check out together." James wanted to protest, but the look on her face told him there was no choice. They stepped out of the safety of the monitor room and into the yawning expanse of the store. The lights flickered above, humming louder than before. Every aisle looked endless, stretching out into shadows. James gripped the flashlight so tightly his knuckles ached. They followed the sound toward the back of the store. As they turned a corner, James caught sight of something strange. One of the mannequins from the clothing section stood in the middle of the floor, directly in their path. Its plastic arms were raised, almost like it was pointing. Maria muttered under her breath, "What the hell?" James felt his skin prickle. That wasn't there before. They edged past it, neither daring to take their eyes off the mannequin. Its painted smile seemed sharper under the fluorescent glow. When they reached the end of the aisle, the crash echoed again, closer now. They rounded the corner into the houseware section. On the ground lay a pyramid of steel stock carts, overturned as if something had rammed them with brute force. Maria swept her flashlight across the shadows. Nothing, just silence. Then James spotted it. On the floor, just beneath one of the toppled carts, was a Walmart name badge. The lettering was scratched, but he could still make it out. "Darren." James' stomach twisted. "Maria, where's Darren?" Before she could answer, the overhead intercom system crackled to life. A distorted voice whispered through the speakers, drawn out and broken by static. "Price check. On aisle 14. The lights flickered, plunging the store into momentary darkness. When they came back on, the mannequin they had passed earlier was gone. The intercom's static-laced voice still echoed in Jameis' ears as he and Maria stood frozen, staring at the toppled stock carts. Darren's badge lay half buried under the steel, a mute accusation that he had been here moments ago. Yet the aisle was empty, the silence pressing in like a physical weight. Maria bent down and picked up the badge. It was scratched and bent, as if it had been crushed under a boot. Her jaw tightened. This doesn't make sense. He wouldn't just walk off without saying anything. James swallowed. Maybe he dropped it? Mariah's eyes cut to him sharply. And the carts just happened to collapse on their own? No. She clipped the badge to her belt, her voice lower now. Something's not right. The intercom crackled again, just for a second, then fell silent. The aisle seemed to grow longer around them, stretching into fluorescent infinity. James felt the hairs on his neck rise. What now? Maria glanced toward the clothing section. We check the others. Chloe's still somewhere in toys. We make sure she's safe. They headed back, moving past the racks of shirts and jeans. That was when James noticed it, the mannequins. Earlier, they had been clustered together near the front displays, dressed in clearance hoodies and seasonal jackets. Now, they stood scattered across the floor. One near the changing rooms, another by the end of an aisle. Their blank eyes and painted smiles seemed to follow James wherever he went. Maria, he whispered, "Did you move those?" Maria swept her flashlight across them. No. The beam caught on one mannequin in particular, a female figure in a red dress. Its head was tilted at a sharp angle, like its neck had been twisted. And its mouth. James could have sworn it was different now. The faint line of paint had stretched wider, curving into a grin far too big for its face. He blinked hard. When his eyes refocused, the grin was still there. "Don't look at them," Maria muttered, grabbing his arm. "Keep moving." But James couldn't help himself. Every step they took, he felt those plastic eyes drilling into him. The mannequins weren't just decorations anymore. They were watchers. As they passed the children's clothing section, a soft clatter echoed behind them. James whipped around. One of the mannequins had toppled over, face first on the floor. Its arms were twisted, fingers bent backwards. Maria tightened her grip on her flashlight. Ignore it. But then James saw it. Beneath the mannequin's outstretched hand was something fresh. A smear of red. Blood. He staggered back. That's not possible. The mannequin's painted face scraped against the tile, as if it had been dragged. The blood led away from it, disappearing under a row of shelves. Maria pulled James forward. "Keep moving." They hurried into the toy section. Shelves stacked with action figures, and dolls loomed over them. Bright boxes with smiling cartoon faces seemed grotesque under the cold fluorescent light. "Chloe?" Maria called softly. "You hear?" Silence. Then laughter. A high, tinny giggle, not from Chloe but from a toy. James scanned the shelves until he found it. A motion-activated doll, its eyes glowing faintly as it repeated a recorded laugh. Except no one had touched it. One by one, more toys joined in. Robotic dogs barking, dolls giggling, plastic cash registers chiming. The aisle filled with a discordant chorus of automated joy, echoing through the emptiness. "Turn them off," James shouted, fumbling with the buttons. But the toys wouldn't stop. Their voices grew louder, overlapping until the sound was unbearable. Then, just as suddenly, everything went silent. James' heart pounded. His ears rang in the quiet. Maria whispered, "Where's Chloe?" A faint sound answered her, not from the toys this time, but from deeper in the aisle. It was a sob. James and Maria followed it, weaving through stacked shelves and displays. At the very end of the toy section, they found Chloe. She was crouched against the wall, hugging her knees, her Walmart vest crumpled beside her. Her eyes were wide, and her face was pale. "Chloe." Maria knelt beside her. "What happened? Where's Darren?" Chloe shook her head violently. Don't ask me. I saw it. I saw it take him." James felt a cold wave wash over him. "What did you see?" Her lips trembled. The man in the aisle. He's not a man. He moved like a shadow." He pulled Darren away. "He smiled at me." James' stomach twisted. "Smiled." Chloe nodded, her whole body shaking. "Like those things." She pointed past them, back toward the clothing section. James turned his head. The mannequins had moved again. Now they were clustered at the entrance to the toy aisle, blocking the way out. Dozens of them, shoulder to shoulder, their painted faces all twisted into grotesque. cracked grins. The aisle lights flickered overhead. The plastic bodies cast long shadows on the floor. And as James stared, one of the mannequins raised its arm, not like a prop tipping over, not by accident, deliberately, slowly. It waved at him. James' flashlight trembled in his grip. The mannequins weren't just staring anymore, they were moving. Their stiff limbs shifted slightly, as if testing their plastic bodies, their grins stretching impossibly wide. He could hear Chloe's quiet sobs behind him, a steady rhythm of fear echoing through the empty aisles. Maria whispered, "We need to move. Stick together." But even as they stepped forward, a sound stopped them cold. Clang. Squeak. Squeak. Clang. It wasn't the mannequins. James turned sharply. A shopping cart rolled slowly down aisle 9, all by itself. No one was pushing it. The wheels creaked with each turn, scraping against the polished tiles. The cart's empty metal frame glinted under the flickering lights. "Not again," James muttered, feeling a cold sweat trickle down his neck. Maria pulled him behind a rack of shelves. "Stay down," she hissed. The cart stopped in the middle of the aisle. A faint scrape of metal on tile accompanied it. Then silence. For a moment, James thought it had stopped moving entirely. Then slowly, it began to inch toward them. He wanted to scream, but his voice caught in his throat. The cart's movement wasn't natural. It swayed from side to side, tilting slightly, as if it had weight inside. Weight that wasn't there. James' flashlight swept across the floor and landed on the back of the cart. Something moved. Something small. A plastic baby seat, part of a stroller attachment, rocked gently back and forth. There was no wind, no one near it, yet it moved as if someone or something was sitting inside, invisible to the eye. Mariah's hand shook as she reached for her radio. "Security, this is not a drill. Something's in the store." Static hissed through the speaker. Then silence. James realized, with a sinking feeling, that the cart was heading straight for them. He grabbed a nearby broom, waving it in front of him. The cart slowed, hesitated, then veered around the end of the shelf. Chloe screamed, "It's following us." "No, that's impossible," James shouted, but the voice sounded distant even to his own ears. The trio ran toward the electronics section. As they passed the cameras, the same shadowy figure from aisle 14 flickered on the monitors. Just a glimpse, a dark outline standing perfectly still. And behind it, carts moved on their own, wheels squeaking softly like a warning. They reached the corner near the home goods section. The cart appeared again, this time completely empty. Yet it moved with intent, sliding slowly as if propelled by a weightless hand. Its metal frame scraped along the tiles, echoing like fingernails on a chalkboard. James' stomach churned. "What do we do?" Mariah's eyes scanned the shelves. "Keep moving. Don't look back." They turned into the gardening aisle. The overhead lights flickered violently, casting long, dancing shadows. The shelves were stocked with pots, fertilizer, and stacks of tools. Normally mundane objects seemed alien now. Twisting shadows stretched unnaturally, and the smell of wet soil and rust hung heavy in the air. The cart was behind them again. James spun around. It had somehow gained speed, rolling silently, faster than physics should allow. He darted forward, almost colliding with a display of terracotta pots. A faint whisper brushed past his ear. "Price check." He froze. The words weren't coming from the intercom this time. They were in the air, a hiss from nowhere and everywhere at once. Chloe gasped and clutched his arm. James swallowed hard. "It's trying to scare us." Maria shook her head. "It's testing us. Something wants to see how we react." As if to prove her point, the cart slammed into the base of a shelf, sending a stack of fertilizer bags tumbling to the floor. Dust puffed into the air, making them cough. The cart stopped at their feet. James shined his flashlight inside. Empty. Yet the baby seat rocked again, gently, mocking their fear. Then they heard footsteps. Not human footsteps, too heavy, too deliberate. Something large moved through the aisles behind them, shuffling boxes and creating crashes with every step. Chloe screamed, pointing toward the back of the store. "Darren!" James and Maria froze. There was a shape, familiar yet grotesque, standing near the frozen food section. Darren? No. His uniform hung in tatters, his face pale as eyes. Wrong. They glowed faintly, unnaturally. He, or whatever he had become, lifted a hand, slowly, almost politely. But the gesture was horrifying. James stumbled backward. We need to get out. Maria nodded. To the security room. Maybe we can lock it out. They ran. Behind them, the cart started rolling again, faster this time, rattling like chains. The shadow of Darren, or the thing that had been him, stretched across the shelves, moving impossibly fast. James dared a glance over his shoulder. The aisle behind them was now crowded with carts, dozens, forming a wall of rolling metal, each one empty, each one moving with a mind of its own. And from the back, a deep, guttural laugh began, echoing through the vast emptiness of the store. Jameis' lungs burned as he and Maria sprinted past the twisted maze of shopping carts, each one moving like a sentient predator. Chloe stumbled behind them, trying to keep pace, her sobs mingling with the echoing laughter that had begun somewhere deep in the store. The fluorescent lights above flickered violently, casting the aisles into strobe-like shadows that made every shelf seem alive. Security room, Maria shouted. We have to make it. The intercom crackled violently, cutting through the chaos. The distorted, static-laden voice that had whispered before now spoke clearly, each word drawn out, deliberate. Price. Check. On. Aisle. 14. Jameis' stomach twisted. It knows. It knows where we are. Don't look back, Maria ordered, grabbing his arm and pulling him along. But he couldn't help himself. Aisle 14. The same aisle where the figure had first appeared on the cameras, loomed ahead. A faint shimmer of movement glimmered between the shelves. Shadows shifted unnaturally. Chloe screamed as a shelf of canned soup toppled over behind them, narrowly missing their legs. Dust choked the air. James coughed, wiping grime from his eyes. Move, Maria hissed. They reached the corner, only to find the aisle completely blocked. Mannequins from the clothing section had rearranged themselves, standing rigid, arms outstretched, grins stretching unnaturally wide. They formed a barricade, leaving only a narrow gap just large enough to squeeze through. But even that felt impossible, as if the aisle itself resisted their passage. From the intercom, the voice laughed, a long, warped chuckle that sounded almost human. Price. Check. On. Aisle. 14. James swallowed hard. It's calling us. Testing us. It wants something. Mariah's eyes darted to a nearby shelf. She grabbed a metal broom handle and waved it like a weapon. We go through together. On 3. 1, 2, 3. They charged the gap. The mannequins didn't move. They didn't need to. The moment they entered, the lights flickered and the air grew colder. Their breath came out in visible puffs, despite the lack of any cold air vents. James froze. There, in the middle of the aisle, was the figure from the camera feed, taller than any normal person, shrouded in shadows that seemed to stretch and warp against the light. Its head tilted in the same impossible angle, eyes glowing faintly like coals. Chloe whimpered, Darren. The figure's mouth stretched into a grin, not a smile, but something more sinister, something that shouldn't be able to exist. And then, as if to confirm their worst fear, a small shopping cart rolled toward them from the far end of the aisle, empty, except for the faint outline of a small, weightless figure in the seat. It rocked slowly, eerily, as if inviting them closer. Jameis' hand shook. We need to move. Now. They stepped forward cautiously, the figure's gaze fixed on them. Every step felt like walking underwater, slow and suffocating. The intercom spoke again, but this time James could hear words almost intelligible. Check. Check. Price. Check. Price. It wasn't just calling the aisle. It was calling them, naming them, marking them. The cart rocked violently, then suddenly darted forward like a missile, rolling straight toward them. James leapt to the side, dragging Chloe with him. The cart smashed into a display of cleaning supplies, sending bottles flying, some bursting, spraying slippery liquid across the tiles. Maria cursed, helping James and Chloe regain their balance. The figure didn't move. It watched, patient, calculating. James swallowed his fear and whispered, "What? What does it want?" Chloe's voice trembled. It wants us to play the game." The lights flickered again. Shadows stretched long across the floor. The mannequins in the aisle seemed to twitch, leaning slightly toward them. Then, from behind, came a new sound, a metallic scraping, faster and heavier than before. Hundreds of carts, rolling on their own, began moving, converging on the aisle from both directions. James froze in horror. They were trapped. The intercom crackled once more. "Price. Check. On. Aisle 14. Or D." Chloe screamed. Maria grabbed her, and James ran forward, shoving the mannequins aside with all his strength. The aisle seemed endless, a corridor of horrors. Each step echoed, bouncing off the walls in a cacophony of whispered laughter and mechanical groans. Suddenly, a hand, impossibly thin and long, snatched at James from the shadows. He yelped and pulled back. Nothing was there, just the whispering echo of a voice in his ear. "Price. Check. Yours." James looked around frantically. The figure from before was gone, the aisle empty. For a moment, silence returned, and then the lights went out completely. The intercom hissed one final time before cutting to silence. "They'll check out." James' heart pounded in the darkness. Maria fumbled for her flashlight. Chloe clung to her, shaking. The aisles had become a black void. Somewhere, the sound of rolling carts echoed, coming from every direction at once. James realized the store had changed. It was no longer the Walmart he knew. It was a labyrinth, alive, aware, and hungry. And the price check was coming for them. James' hands were shaking so badly that he could barely hold the flashlight. The aisle stretched endlessly before them, black and oppressive. Every shelf, every mannequin, every shadow seemed alive. Somewhere in the distance, the whisper of "price check" on aisle 14, repeated like a taunt, echoing off the high ceilings, bouncing endlessly through the store. "We have to find Darren," Maria said, her voice low but firm. "If he's still here, we might be able to." She didn't finish the sentence. A loud crash interrupted her, somewhere down the corridor of frozen goods. The sound echoed and reverberated like a cannon shot. Dust and debris tumbled from the upper shelves, and James saw the metal shelving shake violently. "Darren?" James called. His voice sounded small, swallowed by the vast, unnatural emptiness of the store. Chloe whimpered and grabbed his arm. He's gone." "No, he can't be," James said, trying to keep control. "He can't just disappear." They edged down the aisle, careful to avoid the toppled carts and spilled products that littered the floor. James' flashlight caught glimpses of the mannequins, which now leaned closer, some appearing to twist toward them, their painted smiles stretched wider than possible. Ahead, the air seemed to ripple. A shadow flickered near the storage room door. A metallic scrape echoed, like nails dragging across concrete. James froze. A figure stepped out from the darkness. Darren, or at least what used to be Darren. His uniform hung in tatters, his Walmart vest shredded in some places. His face was pale, almost translucent, and his eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, black and deep like oil. "Darren," James shouted. "It's us. Get back." Darren's head turned slowly, unnaturally. The way he moved was wrong, too stiff, like a puppet. His lips parted in a smile, impossibly wide, stretching into a grimace of teeth that didn't look fully human. James stepped closer. "What happened to you?" Darren, or the thing that had become him, didn't answer. He lifted a hand slowly, pointing toward the interior of the store. Then, in a blur, he disappeared. "Darren!" Chloe screamed, tears streaming down her face. Maria grabbed her arm and shook her. "We need to go. Now. Forget him." But James couldn't leave. Something tugged at his chest, a mix of fear, guilt, and desperate need. He took a tentative step toward the storage room. That's when the sound came. Footsteps, Heavy, deliberate dragging. Not Darren's, something else. Something larger. The lights flickered violently. Shadows moved along the aisles like liquid, stretching and twisting. Then, from the storage room, a low groan emerged, a sound not entirely human. James froze. The air grew colder, the smell of wet earth and metal filling his nostrils. The shadows stretched further into the store, snaking along the floors and walls. Chloe clutched Mariah's arm, shaking. We have to leave. Not without him, James muttered, though his words felt hollow. Suddenly, the storage room door slammed shut with a deafening crash. The sound reverberated throughout the store, echoing off the ceilings and shelves. Dust and plastic debris rained down around them. The intercom hissed to life, a low, distorted whisper. Employee. Missing. Employee. Missing. James' blood ran cold. The voice seemed to come from everywhere at once, surrounding them, echoing inside their own heads. Maria grabbed his arm and yanked him back. Forget him. We can't save anyone. Just get to the security room. As they turned to run, a soft metallic clatter followed them. James glanced over his shoulder. One of the carts from earlier was rolling toward them, empty but ominous. Then a faint glow caught his eye. On the floor, Darren's name badge lay intact, but the plastic letters were etched deep into the tiles, as if burned into the floor. No blood, no body, just the badge. James bent down to pick it up. The instant his fingers brushed it, the aisle went completely dark. A whisper, low and urgent, hissed in his ear. That next shift, Chloe screamed, and Maria cursed, swinging the flashlight wildly. Shadows surged around them, the flickering lights above threatening to fail entirely. Every shelf, every mannequin, every cart seemed to pulse with intent. And then the storage room door creaked open again. Slowly, a figure, or figures, moved inside, gliding in the darkness. James couldn't tell if they were human anymore. The groaning, scraping, and whispering intensified. Run, Maria shouted, dragging them both. They stumbled down the aisles, past overturned carts and scattered merchandise. Every step made the shadows writhe, crawling along the floor toward them. The distant sound of laughter, high-pitched, mechanical, and terrifying, filled the store. And James realized, with a growing sense of horror, that Darren was no longer a person. He was something else now, something the store had claimed. The night shift had become a trap, and the store was hungry for more. The fluorescent lights flickered violently above them as James, Maria, and Chloe stumbled down the endless aisles. Their breaths came in ragged gasps, the metallic scent of the overturned carts and spilled products clinging to their lungs. Every step echoed, magnified by the empty expanse of the store, a chorus of doom. Somewhere behind them, the carts moved again, not slowly this time. They rolled in synchronized waves, metal scraping tiles like fingernails across a chalkboard. James glanced back, heart pounding. One cart veered sharply, pivoted on a single wheel, and surged toward them as if it could read his fear. Chloe screamed and ducked behind a shelf. James grabbed her arm, yanking her back into line. Maria swung the flashlight toward the approaching cart. The beam caught a faint outline inside the seat. Something, or someone, rocked gently, invisible but unmistakably present. James swallowed hard. It's testing us. Mariah's grip tightened on her broom handle. We're not waiting to find out what. Keep moving. They reached the end of the electronics section, where the aisles narrowed. The lights flickered again, and shadows pooled like liquid in the corners. James could hear a soft, scratching sound coming from the ceiling panels above them. It wasn't rain. It wasn't wind. It was something moving, slowly, deliberately. Price. Check. On aisle 14. The intercom hissed again, but now the voice wasn't distant. It seemed to come from every direction, surrounding them in a suffocating ring of static-laced menace. James staggered, covering his ears, and then the mannequins moved. The figures that had once stood frozen along the clothing aisles now walked, or rather lurched, toward them. Their limbs were stiff, jerking at unnatural angles, faces twisted and impossibly wide, painted smiles. One mannequin's head tilted almost all the way backward as it followed James' movement. Chloe shrieked and tried to hide behind James, but a pair of mannequin arms shot out, closing around the shelf near her. The shelf toppled, sending cans clattering to the floor. Dust choked their lungs. "Run!" Maria shouted. They bolted down the narrow aisle, barely escaping the lurching mannequins behind them. But as they turned the corner toward the houseware section, a new horror awaited. The carts were everywhere, hundreds of them, rolling in tight formations. Their metal frames rattled as they surged toward the group, forming a living wall of scraping, rolling terror. James tried to push one aside, impossible. The carts moved as one, coordinated, intelligent. And then came the whisper, soft but unmistakable. "Roll back, roll back." The price. James froze. Roll back? What the hell does that mean? Mariah's eyes widened. I think it's not just the carts. It's everyone the store has claimed. The sound of footsteps echoed behind them. Not carts this time. Heavy, uneven, deliberate. Something, or someone, was stalking them from the shadows. James risked a glance over his shoulder. Darren, or what Darren had become. His face was pale and featureless, his eyes glowing faintly red. His uniform hung in tatters, and his mouth stretched into a grin that seemed to defy human anatomy. Behind him, other figures emerged, former employees, mannequins, perhaps something in between. Each moved like a puppet on invisible strings, their limbs jerking at impossible angles, grinning at them in unison. Chloe screamed and clutched James' arm. We're trapped." James pushed forward. "No, there's always a way out." The intercom crackled violently. Roll back, or D." The cart surged again. James dodged one, skidding across spilled detergent. Maria pulled Chloe along as they sprinted toward the back of the store, past the frozen foods aisle, where it had all started. The shadows twisted, curling along the shelves. The mannequins reached out with wooden-like fingers, plastic grins stretching wider, snapping as if their jaws could unhinge. They reached the office corridor near the loading dock. The lights flickered violently, revealing the outlines of more former employees, or maybe just shadows, waiting for them. Their movements were jerky, unnatural, yet deliberate. One of them stepped forward, and James caught a glimpse of Darren's glowing eyes staring directly at him. The cart slammed into the aisles behind them with deafening crashes. The sound echoed across the store like 1,000 metallic screams. Maria slammed open the office door and ushered them inside. The lights flickered on briefly. Security monitors lined the walls, but the screens were no longer showing cameras. They were all static, broken images of aisles stretching into darkness. Then, suddenly, the screen for aisle 14 flickered to life, and there he was. Darren, or what remained of him, standing perfectly still in the center of the aisle, his head tilted, his eyes glowing, his smile wider than ever. The carts were stacked behind him, forming towers like weapons, ready to surge. A whisper came from the screen, distorted but clear. "Roll back, your shift, or join the dead." Chloe screamed again. James grabbed her, shaking her. "We're not done yet. We're not giving up." Maria slammed the door lock, holding it tight. But even as they caught their breath, James could hear the soft scratching, the faint creak of carts, the slow, deliberate steps of Darren, or whatever he had become, echoing in the aisles outside. And in that moment, James realized the store wasn't just alive. It was hungry, and they were on the menu. The office door rattled violently as James, Maria, and Chloe huddled inside. Every bone in James' body screamed at him to move, to escape. But the cacophony outside made the world feel unreal. The scraping, rolling, groaning of carts had intensified, echoing off the metal shelves and high ceilings. Somewhere Darren, or the thing he had become, chuckled a low, guttural sound that made the blood in James' veins freeze. "We can't stay here," James said, his voice trembling. "We need to move toward the front, the checkout line. Maybe we can barricade it. Maybe we can hold them off." Maria shook her head, gripping her broom tightly. "The checkout? That's suicide. That's the main corridor. Everything funnels through there. But maybe we can use it. Chloe whimpered, hiding behind James. I don't want to die. James knelt, brushing a strand of hair from her face. We're not going to, but we have to keep moving. Together, the trio opened the office door, stepping into the dimly lit aisles. The store had changed. The familiar layout was twisted, elongated, and distorted. Shelves were stacked impossibly high, creating narrow corridors of shadows. The carts had formed lines, moving in unison like predators circling a cage. Mannequins leaned from the sides, their heads tilting impossibly, grinning as if aware of every step they took. A loud, metallic clang echoed from the front. James' stomach dropped. One of the checkout scanners had fallen, spinning slowly in a circle, emitting a distorted red light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Price check. Price check. Last chance. The intercom hissed. The words weren't just warnings anymore. They were commands. The voice came from everywhere at once, surrounding them, vibrating through the tiles beneath their feet. James swallowed hard. It wants us at the checkout. That's the game. That's where something ends. Mariah's eyes widened. Then we play the game. But we stay together. No splitting up. They sprinted down the central corridor toward the checkout. Each step brought new horrors. Carts rolled from side aisles without warning, scattering merchandise. The lights flickered, revealing glimpses of former employees, frozen half-human, half-shadow, standing in impossible poses among the shelves. Their eyes glowed faintly, their mouths stretched into horrific grins. Chloe gasped. It's Darren. James glanced over his shoulder. Darren's form appeared at the far end of the corridor. He, or what was left of him, stood perfectly still, watching them, eyes glowing faint red. Behind him, more figures emerged from the darkness, a grotesque parade of mannequins and half-human forms. James' heart pounded. We have to keep moving. They reached the first set of checkout counters. The registers were down, screens smashed, but the conveyor belts were moving. Slowly, impossibly, as if powered by some unseen force. Each belt carried items that had fallen from the shelves, cans, cereal boxes, toys, and oddly enough, more price tags. The items rearranged themselves as they moved. Look, Maria shouted, pointing at a small pile of tags forming a crude, jagged arrow on the conveyor belt, pointing toward the exit doors. James' eyes widened. It's showing us the way, or luring us into a trap. A sudden crash to their left made them spin. A wall of carts barreled down the aisle, faster this time. They ducked behind the checkout counters, but the carts didn't stop. They collided, sending debris flying, scattering the store in a metallic storm. The intercom hissed again. Check out, or join the dead. James swallowed hard. We don't have a choice. We go to the checkout. Now. They sprinted across the open area, dodging carts and falling shelves. The mannequins stretched from the sides, fingers grasping at them. James barely avoided a sweep of a mannequin arm. Chloe screamed, nearly toppling into a pile of plastic bins. Maria grabbed her and yanked her up. Finally, they reached the first open register. James looked around. There were no more barricades for the moment, only the faint red glow from the scanners. They climbed onto the counters, hoping the height would give them some advantage. The store groaned. Shelves shook, and somewhere in the distance, the grinding sound of carts merging into massive walls echoed. And then, the intercom spoke once more, low and deliberate. Scan, or pay your price. James' blood ran cold. He realized the phrase wasn't just a command. It was a choice, a test, and they were the only items left to scan. Chloe whimpered. James, what does it mean? He swallowed hard. We have to play. We have to survive. Suddenly, the register sparked. The belts moved faster. Items shifted, forming obstacles and pathways. The glow from the scanners painted the walls with twisted shadows. And then a faint, high-pitched mechanical whine began, like 1,000 electronic toys screeching in unison. Darren stepped into the light, a shadow among shadows. His grin stretched impossibly wide. The carts behind him merged into a rolling wave of metal, ready to crush anything in its path. James took a deep breath, clutching Chloe's hand tightly. On my mark, we run straight through the checkout. No hesitation. Maria nodded, broom in hand. And whatever happens, we stick together. The intercom crackled one last time. Price. Check. Your. Souls. Jameis' heart pounded in his chest. The checkout line wasn't just an exit. It was the final test. And behind it, the dead were waiting. James, Maria, and Chloe crouched behind the registers, hearts hammering, breaths coming in short, ragged gasps. The faint red glow from the scanners flickered, illuminating the aisles in intermittent pulses. Each flash revealed carts surging toward them like rolling predators, while mannequins lurched with impossible flexibility, their grins grotesque and mocking. James whispered, "We have to move. Now." No hesitation. Chloe's eyes were wide with terror. I can't. I can't." "You can," Maria hissed. "You have to. Otherwise." The intercom hissed violently, cutting Mariah's words short. "Scan. Or. Pay. Your. Price." The words vibrated through the floor, the walls, even through their bones. James realized the store had become a sentient trap, a living entity whose purpose was now painfully clear: to claim them, one scan at a time. The conveyor belts moved faster now, rattling and screeching like a swarm of metal insects. Items flew from the shelves and onto the belts, forming jagged barriers and narrow pathways, as if the store itself were herding them toward the final challenge. James grabbed Chloe's hand and pulled her to her feet. "We stick together. Don't let go. On 3, we run for the scanners. Straight. No hesitation." Maria adjusted her broom, eyes scanning the shadows. 1, 2, 3. They bolted. Carts surged around them, scraping tiles, tipping over shelves, and scattering debris. A mannequin swung its arm, narrowly missing James. Chloe screamed, but he pulled her forward. The intercom echoed again. "Barcode. Or. B. Claimed." The scanners ahead pulsed violently. Red beams crisscrossed the registers like laser traps in a horror game. James saw, reflected in the glass of the monitors, Darren, or what had become of him, standing at the far end. His eyes glowed red, and his grin stretched wider than the laws of human anatomy allowed. "Almost there," James muttered, pushing past a rolling cart. The belts groaned under the weight of impossible, moving items. Toys clattered together, cans tumbled, and metal racks groaned as if alive. A sudden, piercing shriek cut through the air, coming from above. The ceiling panels vibrated as something large, something unnatural, moved overhead. Chloe stumbled, catching her foot on a fallen display. James yanked her up, just as a cart slammed into the counter beside them. The metal screeched, sending shards of broken plastic flying. Maria shouted, "Keep going. Don't stop." They reached the first scanner. The red beam lit up their path, but James noticed something horrifying. Each scanner displayed a distorted image of themselves. James saw his own face, but the eyes were hollow, black voids. Chloe's reflection showed her screaming silently, her mouth stretched unnaturally. Mariah's own image twisted and contorted, her limbs bending at impossible angles. The barcodes. James whispered, It's scanning us." The intercom hissed again, louder this time. "Scan. Your. Soul. Or. Join. The. Dead." The belts pulsed violently. The items on them shifted, forming jagged spikes and moving walls. Carts converged, cutting off escape routes, forcing them toward the scanners. Darren's glowing eyes tracked them, unwavering, every step calculated. Chloe gasped, "James, what if it kills us?" James gritted his teeth. "We survive. We have to." As they sprinted across the final aisle toward the main checkout, the first scanner lit up in a blinding red flash. James raised his hand instinctively, and the scanner beeped. His reflection on the screen writhed, screaming silently, then froze. He felt a cold weight in his chest, as if something had tried to reach inside him. Maria reached her scanner next. The The red beam painted her in light. She felt the same pressure, the same cold, but she clenched her teeth and pressed forward. Chloe was last. The scanner lit up around her. A piercing shriek filled the store. The belts convulsed, carts collided violently, and mannequins lurched like living predators. For a horrifying moment, it felt as if the store itself was trying to consume her. And then, silence. The red lights flickered and dimmed. The store groaned, settling into a stillness that was almost unnatural. Darren's figure vanished, slipping into the shadows. The cart stopped rolling. The mannequins froze, their painted smiles now static, lifeless. James, Maria, and Chloe sank to the floor, trembling, gasping. The monitors reflected their faces, normal this time. The store seemed empty, but the intercom crackled one final time. Next shift, next price, next soul. James' stomach twisted. They had survived for now, but the store had marked them. It was not done. It was patient. They glanced at the exits. The doors loomed ahead, heavy and unyielding. Yet for the first time, they felt like a possibility. But the echoing whispers and faint metallic clatter hinted that the Walmart they knew no longer existed. The night shift was far from over, and somewhere in the shadows, Darren, or what he had become, watched, waiting. The store was silent, too silent. James, Maria, and Chloe stood near the exit doors, trembling, breath coming in shallow, uneven gasps. The fluorescent lights above flickered intermittently, casting long, stuttering shadows across the tile floor. James glanced around, expecting another attack, another surge of rolling carts or twitching mannequins. But there was nothing, just the eerie stillness of a store that had tasted fear and was waiting. "Are we safe?" Chloe whispered, clutching James' arm. James shook his head. I don't think this thing works the way we think. It doesn't want to kill us. Not exactly. It wants us." Maria interrupted, gripping her broom tightly. "It wants what?" James swallowed hard. "It wants to make us part of it, to mark us, to test us. Tonight, it's letting us live. But it knows we'll be back, or someone else will." A faint, metallic clatter echoed from the back of the store. The air grew cold again, their breath visible in the flickering light. James felt the prickle of movement along his spine, the unmistakable feeling of being watched by something alive, something patient. The intercom crackled violently, and the distorted, whispering voice returned, more urgent than ever. "Final clearance. Every soul. Pay the price, or return." Chloe whimpered. "James, it's not over, is it?" He shook his head grimly. "No, we survived tonight. But the store, it doesn't forget, and it doesn't forgive." Maria squinted down the aisles. The shelves seemed to stretch further than they should, the shadows pooling unnaturally in the corners. The faint outlines of carts leaned like predators in ambush, but they weren't moving. Yet, a sudden flash from one of the monitors drew their attention. The camera feed from aisle 14 flickered to life. Darren's figure appeared, but this time closer. The image wavered, as if he were both there and not there. His glowing eyes met the camera lens, staring directly at them, and then slowly, impossibly, he raised one skeletal, elongated finger. James' stomach dropped. He's marking us, or calling us back, or both. The intercom whispered again, low and insidious. "That next shift, price, never ends." Chloe sobbed, burying her face into Mariah's shoulder. "We have to leave." "We will," James said, tugging them toward the exit. "We just have to get through the doors." The trio ran, passing shattered displays, toppled carts, and scattered merchandise. Each step felt heavier, as if the store itself were resisting their escape. A faint, high-pitched ringing echoed through the aisles, the sound of barcodes scanning themselves, registering unseen purchases, tallying a price they didn't understand. As they neared the exit, the lights flickered violently. The shadows leapt from the shelves, stretching toward them. A cart surged suddenly from a side aisle, blocking their path. James shoved Chloe behind him and swung his broom at the cart. It didn't stop, It rolled unstoppable until it collided violently with a display, exploding into a cloud of dust and plastic. The doors were just ahead. He reached for the handle, cold metal, unyielding. James shook it. Locked. No, Maria hissed. It's not letting us leave. The intercom crackled once more, loud enough to make their ears ring. Final clearance. Next. Time. Same. Price. James' heart hammered. He realized with sinking horror that surviving tonight wasn't enough. The store had rules beyond their understanding. It didn't just hunt employees, it marked them. Tonight, they had survived, but the price was far from paid. Chloe's sobs turned to a whisper. James. What? What happens next? He swallowed hard, staring down the endless aisles stretching into darkness. The monitors flickered again. One by one, the camera feeds showed empty aisles. And then, in the far corner of every screen, a single figure appeared. Darren, watching, waiting, smiling. James' voice trembled. We will survive. For now. But it's not over. Not ever. And the next shift, someone else, or maybe us, will face it again. The store groaned a low, resonant vibration that seemed to come from the very walls. The lights flickered once more, and for a fleeting moment, James could swear he saw the aisles ripple, as if alive, ready to move, ready to hunt again. And somewhere in the shadows, the intercom whispered one final warning. See you. Next shift. James, Maria, and Chloe stared at the locked doors. Fear, exhaustion, and disbelief weighed them down. They had survived the night shift, but the Walmart had claimed a piece of them, and they knew it would never truly let go. The camera feed on the monitors flickered once more, showing an empty aisle. And then, just for a second, a shadowy figure moved across the frame. One glowing red eye, a twisted grin, and a hand raised, beckoning. Somewhere, the store whispered, the next shift, next price. The screen went black,